Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Hanson and today I will be presenting my systematic review for APN 760. Here I have listed a few objectives in order to share the purpose of this systematic review. The review was created to help determine whether fatty acid supplementation helps to relieve depression symptoms. It was also created to reach a conclusion from the various data that is out there and available, as well as to help identify the relationship between fatty acid supplementation and depression. Researchers have examined the relationship between polyunsaturated fatty acids and depression for many years. Research has continually proven that subjects with depression have lower amounts of omega-3 fatty acids in their blood and brain compared to individuals who are not depressed. This finding has led to the controversial topic of whether an increased amount of omega-3 fatty acids have an effect on depression. Research has also found that omega-3s can easily travel through the brain cells and help to relieve inflammation that is caused by depression, which inevitably supports the idea that omega-3s can have a positive effect on those who suffer from depression. Similarly, omega-3s have been linked to mood-related molecules which are associated with depression. A study completed on this theory found that several receptors within the brain could mediate a direct effect of omega-3s, specifically DHA, on neurons to control emotional behavior, which again supports the theory that omega-3 fatty acids could have a positive impact on those who suffer from depression. Pregnant women have an increased risk of omega-3 deficiency due to the fact that they provide DHA to the fetus. Of this population, it has been determined that nearly 10% of women end up experiencing postpartum depression, which may be associated with the fact that they are deficient in omega-3 fatty acids. So to introduce this systematic review, it examines 4 similar studies that test the theory of whether increased fatty acid supplementation helped to decrease depression symptoms among pregnant women. The review entails a detailed summary of each study, including their relation to the research question. Upon investigation, it is then determined whether fatty acid supplementation helps to reduce depression among pregnant women or not. The research question for this systematic review follows the PICO format, and the research question is, among women ages 18 to 45 who are at a gestational age of 12 weeks or more, or up to 8 months postpartum and suffering from depression, or have a history of depression, what is the effect of a daily oral supplement of omega-3 fatty acid on their depression symptoms, which are measured through either the Edinburgh Postnatal Scale of Depression or the Hamilton Rating Scale of Depression. For the search and strategy portion of this review, I used 2 different databases, the PubMed database and the Biomed Central database, to search for articles related to the research question. I then used categories related to the research question to help determine which search terms I would use for each search. I separated the categories by population, intervention, comparison, and outcomes. I also wrote out criteria to help narrow the search down to my specific niche. I determined what would be included, such as group size, what type of study, publishing years, and more, as well as what could not be included in the articles I chose for this review. And here you can see both a list of the inclusion and exclusion criteria. After searching through both databases using the various search terms, I was able to identify 258 articles. Unfortunately, there were many articles that were duplicates on either both the databases or just one database. After those were removed, I was left with 113 articles. I then screened each article to see if they met my inclusion criteria, and after that was completed, I was left with 12 articles. The articles that were left were all full-text articles that were fully screened and either included or excluded from the review. After this was all completed, I was left with 4 articles that were sufficient enough for this review. The first study I found was a randomized double-blind controlled trial where researchers were tested the relative effects of DHA and EPA-rich fish oils on the prevention of depression symptoms among pregnant women who were at an increased risk of depression. Researchers enrolled 126 pregnant women for this study who were at risk for depression. The scale of depression used to determine this was the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale, where women must have scored between a 9 and 19 in order to be considered for the study. The intervention included random assignment of EPA-rich fish oil, which consisted of 1,060 milligrams of EPA plus 274 milligrams of DHA, or a DHA-rich fish oil, which consisted of 900 milligrams of DHA plus 180 milligrams of EPA, or a placebo pill, which consisted of soy oil. Participants needed to complete the Beck Depression Inventory and Mini International Neuropsychiatric Interview at enrollment 26 to 28 weeks, 34 to 36 weeks pregnant, and 6 to 8 weeks postpartum to measure their depression symptoms. It was determined that the serum DHA concentrations at 34 to 36 weeks pregnant showed a drop in the Beck Depression Inventory score, but was not strong enough to support the hypothesis. The second study was a randomized placebo-controlled double-blind trial that was aimed to evaluate the efficacy of a daily dose of fish oil on the prevention of postpartum depression. 60 pregnant women were identified as being at risk for postpartum depression and were invited to join the study. The intervention included randomization of fish oil capsules, which were 1.8 grams of EPA, or 0.72 grams of DHA, or a placebo. The supplementation started at 22 to 24 weeks of gestation and lasted for 16 weeks. The outcome was measured through the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale, which had to have a score of equal or less than 11. As a result, women in their second and third trimester presented a higher reduction in the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression score compared to the control group, but this was also not strong enough to support the research hypothesis. The third study was an open-label pilot study where researchers aimed to explore the feasibility of using 1,800 milligrams of omega-3 supplementation for their future double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, and to clarify the clinical difference and similarity between two participating sites, Japan and Taiwan. Women who were 12 to 24 weeks gestation with depression symptoms were able to participate in the study. They were given daily supplements of omega-3 capsules containing 1,206 milligrams of EPA and 609 milligrams of DHA over a span of 12 weeks. Due to a complication of participants combining supplementation with their everyday diets containing omega-3 foods, only 8 women from Japan were included in this study and 5 women from Taiwan. At the end of the study, the Hamilton Rating Scale for Depression was used to measure depression symptoms, and although there was a decrease in depression from the start of the study, researchers determined that more research needs to be completed in order to come to a conclusion on the effects that omega-3 fatty acids have on pregnant women with depression. The last study that was used for this review was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial that recruited 60 pregnant women who were suffering from depression. The participants were given fish oil capsules of 1,440 milligrams a day of DHA or a placebo of olive oil, and it was given up until childbirth. The Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale was used throughout 8 points within the trial to measure the participants' scale of depression. These points included 4 sets of gestational weeks starting at 22 weeks and 4 sets of postpartum weeks starting at week 2 through 6 months postpartum. In conclusion, the omega-3 group showed a reduction in score throughout the last gestational period up to the last postpartum period. However, researchers determined that this was also not a significant enough result for the research hypothesis. Here I have displayed a visual representation of the overall systematic review. I've showed the articles that were screened and the articles that were included, the population, the intervention, trial length, the measurements of depression, and then the outcomes. In all of the studies included in this review, 1,200 to 1,800 milligrams of EPA and DHA were given to participants as a daily supplement for 3 to 12 weeks. Some studies displayed a reduction in depression scores during gestational periods of 30 to 36 weeks. However, this was not significant enough to support the hypothesis. Therefore, it's been concluded that omega-3 supplementation does not reduce the risk of depression among pregnant women, and the evidence grade that was given for this review was fair. Here I have listed the strengths and limitations of this review. So some of the strengths were that 3 out of the 4 studies were randomized, double-blind, and placebo-controlled trials. All of the studies also used DHA, omega-3 fatty acid, and a placebo. And all the studies included participants who were 12 weeks gestation or more. Some of the limitations were that one study used the Hamilton Rating Depression Scale to measure depression symptoms instead of the Edinburgh Postpartum Depression Scale. One study did not use EPA to determine the effectiveness of omega-3 fatty acids on depression symptoms. And one study had a very small participant population compared to the 60 to 126 participants in the other studies. And another limitation was that each study found supportive evidence for their hypothesis, but all of the studies showed that it was not strong enough to support the hypothesis. So, implications from this review for research was that there was no statistically significant reduction in depression scale scores with doses of 1,200 to 1,800 milligrams a day of polyunsaturated fatty acids. So future research can use this information to help design their future studies. And 1,400 milligrams a day of omega-3 fatty acids or more showed a slight reduction in depression scores in each study, so that could be used as a starting point in future research. Some implications from this research for practice would be that healthcare professionals could recommend an omega-3 supplement of 1,400 milligrams a day or more, and this might help pregnant women who are suffering from depression with their depression symptoms. They can also suggest a higher amount of DHA than EPA fatty acids to pregnant women of 30 weeks through postpartum. Omega-3 supplements will not help pregnant women who are at a gestational age that is younger than 30 weeks, and other options should be recommended to women of this gestational age. These are my references. and I'd like to thank you for watching.